Hello, I'm Connor here with Tanner, and
What's up?
hey, uh, sorry that was kind of awkward. And today we're gonna be looking at basically just power ranking all the teams so far in NAL because I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know. Is Parabellum the best team ever? They beat Oxygen, or who's
They
even
did beat
good right now?
Oxygen. They got their 3 points. Okay, so we starting from the bottom, I'd assume.
Yeah. Let's just start from the bottom. So who do you? Okay. Well, I pretty much think one team from what I've seen is just clearly below everyone else. Oh, and to be clear, we're not picking like these standings don't really have much to do with what we're picking. We're not picking like who we think's gonna be like first, second, third at like the end. We're just picking like who we believe to be the theoretical best team. So for me, who I've seen by far the least out of, I think Mirage. What are who do you have in
I
your?
thought you said Parabellum was your last one. You changed up on me.
You know,
Um,
I was thinking about it, and I did. I did change up on you.
okay. I'm putting Parabellum at the bottom. It's pretty close, and I'll let you give your reasons for it.
Okay. Sell me Mirage, because the more I was thinking about it, I can't put anyone above Mirage. So kind of justify them to me.
So I mean, well, okay. So you said your rankings are going to be crazy, but you just picked the team with the fewest points. At least I'm.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean I can't really sell Mirage too much, and it's just really tough for any of the new teams. Beast Coast have done pretty well with what they've been given so far. 2-1 is pretty respectable. Maybe they played the Mickey Mouse Sonics. Perhaps if they played them later on, things would have gone differently. But Mirage, I think just because they have all proven players, even though some, maybe Rampy's been shaky lately, and Yeti, same sort of thing. He did have a really good stage 3, but, somewhat inconsistent players. I think Kansan's been solid before he got dropped, and even now. Parabellum just has a lot more to prove to me. I think Laxing, it seemed like he got dropped out of nowhere, right? He wasn't doing bad or anything.
Yeah.
And Skies has been on several rosters in just in the last year. He was Dark Zero, Space Station, Dark Zero, now Parabellum. And he had like one good game, if I remember right, against, I think it was the Space Station game, but they lost that handily, so it didn't end up mattering. I think mostly for the reason that Parabellum have a lot to prove. Yes, they do have 3 times as many points as Mirage, but I don't know, that the win over Auction just seemed like a super fluke. And Mirage,
Yeah.
they should have 3 points. Like, they should have beat Space. They were up 6-3, and then they just choked it away.
I agree. I watched the game against Oxygen. I watched all the games, but I thought during that game that like wait how were they winning like the whole time? I was thinking there's no way they're gonna win, and they just did. I think it was largely
Yeah.
going to be a ones, but I still have to put Mirage just a little below them because it's not about the points. It's not about the 1 point. It's about the way Mirage got that 1 point because. They just look terrible in all of their games, particularly their Dark Zero game. I can really remember one round where DC was just shitting on them so hard they didn't care. They did like an old, they were playing on Skyscraper. They did like an old karaoke only take where you bring a Monty and you try to walk in from the balcony. You put someone on karaoke window, you breach Geisha, and you just try to pinch karaoke from the balcony and Geisha. And, of course, Panba bought a shotgun and just ran up Black Stairs and killed everyone. Like, that's the kind of respect this team is getting. So, I can't put anyone below them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really trying hard not to knock these new teams, and for the sake of this, I mean, we're comparing Parabellum to Mirage right now, so like they both should get a little bit more credit. If I'm being honest, these are probably 2 of the teams I paid a little bit less attention to their games. There's 14 games in 2 days. I can't actively watch all of them, and I do think the Oxygen Parabellum one is one that I wasn't really watching very closely, and I guess I was kind of watching Mirage Dark Zero, but I don't know. I guess I'm going to really watch something. It's some of the more marquee matchups, so I wasn't noticing as many of the issues. But like Mirage is just like it's cobbled together. Like there's a few pre-built synergy. Like Kansan and Yeti played together for a long time, and Yeti and Rampy were just playing together. But it is just 5 players mostly tossed together. Parabellum, I mean, a little bit less so. And Skies and Laxing have played together a bunch of times, and then the 3 new players. I think their system makes sense because it was pretty obvious. Skies was going to be on Breach, Laxing was probably going to be on the Laxing roles, and then the 3 new players could be on the more aggressive roles, where generally you put the new players.
Sorry, this doesn't relate, but I love how the Laxing rolls as a team. Like, Laxing is just such a special dude.
Yeah. And it's become like less of a thing, and that's probably part of the reason. Like, a lot of people don't even believe the Laxing role is like really a role.
Eddie got dropped, but still.
Sure, but I mean, Laxing just like all-time, he's like top 10 all-time stats on LAN or something like that. Like, his stats are just incredible, and maybe his team wasn't always a tip-top team, even though they were also, usually a pretty top team. A few years ago, maybe they were like 4th, they were usually outclassed by Dark Zero, TSM, SSG. But all of this to say, I don't know, I just really feel like the Parabellum win was a fluke, and Mirage should also have 3 points, and Mirage have more games to play. I think that's a big advantage. It's really sucks for Parabellum that they're the only one of the 3 new teams that had to play 4 games in the first week rather than 3. So Beast Coast and Mirage both have 4 games to go. Another week of practice is massive when you only had, maybe a few weeks of practice leading up to it. So I'm giving Mirage a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. They have more proven players, and maybe they haven't proven themselves at this stage, but I don't know, you just can't go off what we've seen too much because, again, not very much practice to play a few best of ones over the course of 2 days. I'm just going with Mirage, mostly as a gut feeling. Like, maybe that'll be proven wrong.
Okay, 1.5 more thoughts about Mirage before we move on, because we're taking a lot of time on this. But, well, first of all, the one thing I've loved watching Mirage is I love watching Rampy versus old Rampy. Like, this Rampy, I can't remember who it was against or what the situation was.
Maniac. It's so
he just insta-locking Ying and goddamn running at people. Not a care in the world. I'm loving Rampy.
He walked in lobby or something, and he was trying to push up the house stairs.
Yeah.
And he just kept throwing candelas when there's a dude right. It was so funny.
Yeah, watching Rampy is so fun. But outside of that, I think, you see choosing proven people as a benefit. I kind of detract for them from that, and here's my reasoning behind that. It's because let's just say, I don't know, Space Station is just saying, okay, we don't want Rampy, or okay, this was Astralis doesn't exist anymore, but Astralis is saying we don't want DB Fire. Sonic is saying we don't want Yeti, and then you think, no, I think these teams are pretty good, I'm gonna pick up their scraps. Well, how are you gonna beat the team? You have to then beat OXG, who believed, or sorry, not OXG, you have to beat Space Station, who believed that your player was not good enough to be on their team. And I feel like that's just going to be an uphill battle. Like, these proven players are displaced from teams for reasons, for the most part. And I feel like it's hard when you're trying to piece them together to be winning.
I mean, for sure, Mirage is the biggest scraps team at the moment. Kansan dropped from Sonics, Yeti dropped from Sonics, and then SSG. Rampy dropped from SSG. Surf, I guess he didn't technically got dropped. He was on Beast Coast, and then DP Fire dropped from it. They're all drop players, really.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do when you have $0 to spend on players? And I don't know, Drip Doolin's just throwing together a team. And so if you want to compare it to the rest of the
hey, put some respect on Backyard against 420 name, okay? I don't want to hear anything.
I'm not saying I'm just saying he's the one that put together the team. I'm not saying anything bad about him or that he didn't do a good job. We'll have to see if he did do a good job. But again, I'm saying Mirage is pretty notorious for not having any money. So I don't know. Maybe these players are aware that they're not going to be getting paid much, if anything at all, and they were just willing and they're hungry to come back. I mean, there have been instances before a player gets dropped, they go to a different team and they do well. But I do get what you're saying. We've seen them get dropped, and so they're a little bit more of a known quantity, whereas you have Fish and Spiker on Parabellum, and maybe they'll end up sucking, but we haven't seen them be bad yet, so maybe their ceiling is much higher. I just feel in at least the somewhat short term, I think Mirage, maybe they'll figure stuff out. It's so tough to say because they might be eliminated from the direct major contention next week, right? Because if they don't make top 6, they'll have to go through whatever open qualifiers or something. So it's just such a short time frame. But if we're just again going off the power rankings, I don't know. It's a tough call, but I'm gonna put And I guess we didn't say it explicitly, but Mirage is my next one. Like they're
Yeah.
7.
Okay, so let's move on from the 7-8 because I think we both agree they're close, and whichever way you put them, it doesn't matter too much.
That is your Parabellum is your 7.
Yes. So let's go to what we both know is going to be both of our 6s. Let's talk about Beast Coast for a minute. What are your thoughts on like?
Oh, I was hoping for a hot call from you here. Yeah.
No, not yet. I want to, but
yeah.
The teams above them, it's impossible.
You want me to go first here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've been impressed that they've gotten as many points as they have so far. I wouldn't say that their play has been massively impressive. I mean, they got pretty well manhandled by Oxygen, and that was their first game. I thought there was like an outside chance that they pull the upset because whenever I see a good team take another team to border, I'm just wondering like, is this a mistake? Because if they're better on the day, Oxygen is really good on border. But you know, we've seen other teams, and especially when you don't know what they're going to do. There's only so many things you can do on border. But if they just take the gunfights and they win the gunfights, you know, if Hat goes a little bit crazy or somebody, like you could lose. But no, they lost Oxygen in their first game, and then they come back and they play Sonics, and they were getting crushed by Sonics in the first half, and then Sonics were just awful on defense. Like Beast Coast were just walking in and taking all the control, and then
we'll get to Sonics later. But I think Beast Coast. I think people don't give Beast Coast enough credit for that win. Like Sonics are like still a really good team, and they didn't just like give away rounds.
They're strong players, but they were just not like they just weren't playing well. Like
I mean, does Sonics
terribly, like as a team?
Okay, I don't want to talk about Sonics too much right now, but I feel like they didn't. Their strategical play didn't severely deviate from how they normally play.
Really?
Yes.
And well, they played on Cafe, which we don't have a lot of data on. They played it twice
yes,
at
they
SI,
don't like playing
but
Cafe.
before that, they hadn't played it in like a year or whatever.
At least recently. Sorry, I struck my mic.
And then anyway, then they played Space Station, and Beast Coast took them all 15 rounds, and finally somebody takes down Space Station in round 15. So that's another solid win. I don't know. I guess that's the one I'd credit them the most for, Beast Coast, even though they only got the 2 points. But I don't know. I just felt like Sonics were playing so badly. Definitely shouldn't have won that. Especially they got off to a 4-2 lead. That should have been a 5-1 lead because they got clutched on by Mr. B.
Hey, Mr. B.
Yeah, credit to Beast Coast for what they've done so far. But like Hyper and Vert just haven't been good. And maybe give them a little bit more time. Maybe they just need to warm up more.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're getting massively outperformed by Hat and Mr. B. I don't know.
I'm disappointed they dropped Tristan, personally. Like, I think, like, it's the same thing I was saying before. But if OXG is saying, hey, we don't want Vert, it's really hard to pick him up and go win. But you've been playing with Tristan. You know he's good. I think they should have just stuck with Tristan.
Yeah, well, okay, so somebody told me in my comments a little bit ago that Tristan's parents didn't like the contract that he was offered by Beast Coast, and that's why Tristan declined it.
That would make sense.
I guess Super was talking about that on his stream. So I guess they were forced to get Vert. Like maybe they wanted Vert anyways. Like they decided.
Yeah.
Tristan's good, and maybe Vert is washed, but if nothing else, it's more experience on the team. So I don't know if that's 100% true, what the exact situation was, but that's what somebody.
That'd be a little awkward if it was true, though, right? Because he was playing for $0, and now he's getting offered like a pro league contract.
I mean, yeah, but again, it's a contract, and I don't know. Maybe it was just really a pathetic offer, and
maybe
for like, no more Siege if this is all you're gonna get paid. And again, I don't know how
yeah,
he's gonna get paid.
I don't know, like. Yeah, it's a tough situation. I don't know who to point fingers at if that's true. But also, maybe I've been being too harsh on Vertical. Like, he has been able to perform like before. Like, he was maybe the best player in NA for a long time. So
yeah, he was definitely up there. And so was Hyper, like, for a really long time.
Hyper was underrated, too. He was one of those players that that no one really gave the credit he deserved, but he was spectacular.
I don't know when you saw Blood. I wouldn't, like, way back in the day, I wouldn't even say Hyper was underrated. Everybody knew Hyper was a monster, and then maybe a few years ago, a little bit less so. They started picking up like new players, like when they brought in like Panba and NGR and whatever. Hyper fell into obscurity a little bit, but when Dark Zero first picked up Hyper, this guy was not like every stage, like he was a top 5 player, like every stage.
Okay, let's move on because I have a hot take at 5, and I want to. Okay, so they're lower on the standings, so maybe it's not as hot take as it could be. But based off the okay, I have a hot take in the opposite way with DZ, but we're gonna. Okay, I have Sonics. I'm just gonna put a name to it because I know they're lower on the stands, but the 5 players they have, I feel like putting them anywhere below 3, it feels criminal, right? Like,
for sure.
Let me just pull up their stats, but their player stats aren't bad. Besides Geo, but I mean, Geo's playing Breach. It's very excusable. But everyone's playing pretty well, and Citizen's -2, but he's gonna pick it up. And on paper, they have a pretty good team, and their ceiling, to be honest, their ceiling is major winning. And if I were to look at them with like rose-colored glasses, I could see them at like 2 or 3 or something. But their floor, which they've been hitting a lot, getting 1v5 by Shuttle with a TCSG, and then 1v3 by Mr. B. They can't keep leads, and just tactically, for the past few months, they just haven't been able to play the game well, in my opinion. Do you agree with me?
They've just not been a good team. I put Sonics at number 5 as well, and I really didn't want to. Coming into the stage, I didn't make any sort of official ranking, but I was saying the big 3 look like they should be Sonics, Oxygen, and M80, and then maybe we'll see Space Station once they get a few more reps under their belt. They came out of the gate kind of hot, but again, Oxygen, Sonics, M80 looked like the big 3, and that was despite Sonic's bad SI performance. I was just chalking that up to a little bit of a fluke, but before they picked up Citizen, they were just top 4 at the previous major. Like with Kansan, they made top 4. They were second place in NAL, and now this stage they're bad. They've only played 3 games. They lost to Beast Coast.
I don't want to get too stuck up on the small sample size, because I think in a BO3 they probably would have beaten Beast Coast. I don't want to get too caught up like they lost to Beast Coast, so therefore they're bad. I'm just thinking for the past few months, this is all I've seen of them. And maybe if there was more Siege, they would have played more good Siege. But the indicators just aren't really there from them at a tactical side. And also, I have kind of a theory about why they're doing bad. I saw a lot of people were concerned about this, like when they saw that Citizen was picked up. Kind of the amount of enabling that, the amount of solo plays and isolated plays that both Grixer and Citizen like to make. They both require a lot of enablement from their team to be able to make that. So, pairing them together, it's like they take all the oxygen out of the room. There's not enough. You can't support them. Geo's doing his best, but they're. Are you familiar? Do you watch any basketball?
No, not really a traditional sports guy.
Okay, well, maybe I'll lose you for a second, but in basketball, I'll try to keep it simple. There's a term called heliocentrism, and basically, it's just you have your best player, you just give him the ball every time. Just think of it like that.
Yeah.
So that's what Citizen and Grixer were kind of able to do. They were both able to basically just make whatever solo plays they wanted on Citizen on G2, and then Grixer on Sonics, and then the whole team was kind of revolving around, how can we enable these plays that they want to make? How can we get them to, pop off and be able to get us wins? And now that they're paired together, the whole team, they can't rotate around 2 players. You can't have that much setup, and these 2 Suns take up too much oxygen, and they can't play together in a coordinated fashion without some kind of support. I don't know. Do you agree with me on that?
No, I understand what you're saying, and they've both been called lurkers in the past, and so they're not a lot of the plays they're not making aren't active, but so if Grixer's on one side of the map doing one thing, waiting for his opportunity, even if he doesn't have direct support, he needs somebody pulling the attention away from him, you need and Kansan or Yeti or whoever it was at the time to be doing things so that he can find his opening. And my understanding is sort of, I mean, I'm assuming that they tried to center things a little bit more around Citizen. I think I think it's supposed to be Rexon on first entry, Citizen on second entry, Grixer on like more flex kind of thing.
Yeah, but you can tell by kind of their lineup. Like, they really have 4 fraggers and 1 support that's basically just trying to enable 4 players. And you can kind of see pitfalls in that. And I think that's why they throw so many, like, man-ups. They seem to not really have that much structure in their play.
Yeah, I mean, it's super tricky. Like, on paper, just like one of the best teams probably in the world if you just looked at all these names.
Yeah.
But it's not a well-balanced team, I guess. You know, Gunner gets a little bit more pigeonholed into being like sort of second support, but that's not, you know, why did they pick him up to do that? And I guess when they picked him up, they still had, who was it on the roster? They got him and Geo, and they dropped Yeti and Super, right? And that's a lot of your structure.
Well, Super technically retired, but yeah, your point's
well, yeah, but sure. I mean, he left the roster. Is just what I'm saying.
Okay, so let's move on from Sonic, because I think we've talked about him a good bit. Who do you think is?
Okay,
sorry, you have another point?
I mean, I think. So I would have liked to have put them higher. If they did a little bit better at SI, I would still put them higher, because like this team just cannot continue to be bad. Like they have to figure something out. Like the players are just so good. I'd be so surprised. So I imagine they're going to bounce back. I just don't know if it's going to be like relatively soon, and the competition's very high. So putting them at 5 maybe is doing them at a disservice, but because they did so bad at SI and this stage thus far, it just combines that, I don't know, I put them at 5. I just want to say that.
Yeah, their ceiling's like 2. Let's see them get near it. Okay, so moving on. Who do you have at 4?
I put Dark Zero at 4.
Wow, that one hurts me a little bit. I'm a
big Dark Zero guy.
I'm a Dark Zero believer.
That's why you didn't have him at 5.
But I will say, I already know. I want to talk about Dark Zero first, if you're okay with that. I already know why you put Dark Zero at 4 and what we're disagreeing on. You can't see my screen, but it's Achieved. Because I watched your video and you definitely said that Achieved was on Fraud Watch. He was your number 1 Fraud Watch. And honestly, I think that we just have a very small sample size. I believe Dark Zero's played 3 games, right? That he has played poorly those 3 games, but in his years playing on TSM, I think, okay, if you took a small sample size, like there were times Bolo popped off, Chula, and I think 2020 NA Finals was clearly their best player, Merc maybe during SI, but if you just take like a long stretch, like over that TSM team, he was, in my opinion, their best player. And I don't see why that... Sorry. What were you going to say?
I agree. Before, if you discount like the last year or so, I was always of the opinion that Achieve was their best player. Like maybe Merc, but Merc was very inconsistent. I always thought it was Achieve.
Well, the last year, everyone's played kind of bad on TSM. But I think that was more of a TSM issue than like everyone declined a lot. But anyways, Achieve is clearly a great player. And maybe he keeps doing bad. And if so, Dark Zero at 4 is very reasonable. But I think we're looking at a 3-game sample size and we're trying to extrapolate. Like, I gotta look at what I know Achieved can do, and I know Achieved can do better than this, and he really should. And so I actually have Dark Zero all the way up at 2.
Oh, boy.
And sorry, what were you gonna say?
You got it.
I just love this Dark Zero roster. NJR is obviously a fantastic player, and I like how they don't necessarily have like one player that's going to be tethered to Breach. This is kind of what Sonic's imagined. Obviously, Sonic's imagined this with more gun skill because Canadian isn't necessarily like the best gunner, but this is kind of what they imagined, where you just, I mean, they have Geo playing support, but you have like a bunch of people looking for kills. But Dark Zero just plays so structured and so well that I think they can kind of overcome it. And watching them, to me, it reminds me of when Troy originally joined the SSG roster back when they were all like crazy gunners. Like watching him play with Gav and Pamba. and NJ, and if Achieve like starts playing like he used to, it's just Canadian or a bunch of gunners playing good structured siege. And now that they're playing faster, they're kind of dealing with some of their time issues. Like, I think they're going to be scary in international play.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, we definitely need to see more from Dark Zero. Like, everybody made roster changes fairly recently, but they brought on Achieved and they brought on Gaveni pretty recently. You know, you say that I think the issue is just Achieved, and obviously he's the worst rated player in the league right now. It's a concern. Only 3 games in, he can turn it around. But, I mean, the problem is that NJR is their best player, like, by an absolute mile. Like, look, I mean, 1.38 rating, Gaveni has a 1.02. And again, you know, it's only over 3 games, but NJR is LeBron and everyone else is like high school basketball players. Like
J.R. Smith.
He carried them. He had to carry them so hard against M80, like, you know, and I've said it before. He had a 1v4 clutch to even get them to overtime eventually. So really, they should have lost to M80. They got crushed by Oxygen, and so that only leaves. They had a dominant win over Mirage, but generally, Dark Zero has been a team that's been good at dismantling like weaker teams, newer weaker teams like Mirage. So I don't know. They just haven't been impressive against the 2 other top teams that they played against.
I don't know if I would agree they were impressive against M80. They looked like very similar to M80.
They weren't terrible, and M80 also is, I don't think, playing it nearly as well as they can. But
and I'm not going to talk about M80 yet, but I am a massive M80 believer, so I think being similar to M80 is better than you think. And then that OXC game, I just want to blame it on it being a BO1. If it keeps happening, maybe I'll hit the alarm bells, but they just had some really bad Chalet defenses, and then they couldn't come back from it. But I don't think it's anything like...
I don't know. Like, it's, you know, 2-7 against Oxygen, Parabellum beat Oxygen, and again, best of ones, weird stuff happens, different mat. One was Oregon, one was Chalet, whatever. It's just concerning. Like, we're making this at an odd time in the stage where we've seen already half the games, but it's only a few games for each team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I need to see NJR get more backup. Like, Gaveni's been okay, Panda's been okay, Canadian's been a little bit lackluster, but it's generally what you expect from, like, he's, you know, maybe not making the plays happen numerically, but he's enabling things, and sometimes he has nice plays. And then She's been awful, but, you know, let him bounce back or something.
And sorry.
I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about it.
One more thought, just to end off on Dark Zero. You could make the argument that yes, Achieved is doing worse than he's going to do, but he's performing at unsustainably bad levels. But in the same sense, NJ is performing at unsustainably good levels. So Dark Zero's not going to get any better because they're just going to like both kind of balance out to an equilibrium. And that like NJ getting a little worse, like not bad, but you just can't have a 1.4 KD for like a whole stage in a major. You can't do that. And so even if Achieve gets better, it's just going to get canceled out.
I mean, well, you can, because I mean, we've seen Vertical, Newers, Hot and Cold, like all go insanely well.
Not
in
1.4 though. Like that's a little crazy. And I don't. And NJ
Hot went like 18-2 on entry one stage, and like,
wasn't that on Mirage though?
No, that was on Space Station.
That was on Space Station. Okay.
He did pretty well on Mirage as well, just not that well.
No,
like he was unstoppable. I think like well above a 1.4 KD. I don't remember what it was, but
yeah,
like ungodly number.
Well, at the least, yeah, NJ
you can't
could
expect
do
a player to do that. Like he could do that, but I mean you can't rely on it. Yeah, I think I've been an NJR believer for a long time. I think he's easily top 5 in NA, but you know some people have him like top 3, top 2 or something.
Yeah,
and he's just proving it again and again. Like internationally within the region, this guy can't be stopped really. But again, you know maybe Achieve gets a little bit better, NJR gets a little bit worse. But if NJR played a little bit worse against M80, they could have gotten no points. And I don't know. It's just a little bit concerning. Like I'm just staring at the stats and seeing 2 players barely at 1.0, NJR gargantuan stats, Canadian Achieve underachieving. Like, it's just concerning to me.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry. It sounded like I was dissing NJR. I just want to make it clear. I think he can't sustain 1.4 because of his roles and like how much he's being supported. He's more of a supporter than a supported player. But anyways, let's move on to my number 4, and this is kind of my first hot take. You just explained yours in Dark Zero, and you have cooled me off a little bit about Dark Zero. like the more I think about their team and how they'll go moving forward. But I still think they have a lot of potential. But anyways, I wanted to talk about OXG, who I have at 4.
Ooh,
I'm assuming, did you have them at 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are the consensus one, but like watching the games, I haven't seen that from them. And okay, I'll talk about the games in a second, but one thing I did want to bring up before the game is I know they performed very well at SI. One second, I want to pull up SI so I can
I mean, if you're going to talk about how they had a relatively easy path at it, yeah.
I was going to talk about exactly that. Because in my opinion, like, if you want to talk about how good a team is, like, sure, it's impressive. It's cool that they got top 3. If you want to talk the coolness of it, it's cooler to get top 3 than, like, top 6. But the thing is, they lost to G2 and W7M. M80 did the same thing. And M80 didn't get that cool top 3 because they got a cupcake schedule before playing those. Not cupcake. They played some tough teams. They beat Los 1. But, it wasn't like they didn't beat any top 5 teams. So they got top 3, but they didn't really get top 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, the accolades of some
of
the
sorry,
teams
they
that
beat Wolves.
had to grind through the lower bracket, like, Astralis had a really, really impressive run. Like, they beat a lot of teams because they instantly went in the lower bracket, whereas Oxygen got, like, buys, basically, because if you go through the upper bracket, you have to play fewer matches. Of all the teams that placed well, like, they probably had the easiest schedule, but they were competitive against W7M. Like, they had 7-0 against them. They could, maybe if they played a little bit better, they could have gone to the grand final and probably lost to G2 or W7M there, but still, they could have made it there. And then did they get 2-0'd by G2 or 2-1? I don't remember.
No, it was 2-0.
Do you have it? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
They didn't hang with the top teams, and then they probably, I don't know if you have that. They lost in groups, but were they 3-1?
No, I don't have groups up, but I don't.
Okay, whatever. I think they were. I don't remember. It was a little bit ago now. It's getting a bit lost in
my
mind. But yeah, no,
8 points, 2-2.
2-2. Okay, so well. It is what it is, yeah. Top 3, but certainly, a less difficult path to get there than other teams had. But still, it's top 3, and if you look at the stage before that, obviously, I mean, they were awful for the first half, but then they were really good in the second half, and then they crushed SCS, which also isn't the highest level of competition.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't really.
I'm just bringing this up to disprove the point because I know a lot of people said OXG's top 3 in the world. They finished the highest out of NA teams. How are they not clearly not the best? I'm just explaining that. You have to, like, if you just gave me in a silver stack, like, number 3, like, just handed it to me, like, we wouldn't be the 3rd best.
Okay,
like,
well,
the title itself. That's I'm not calling us as OXG that bad, but I'm just saying the title itself of top 3 isn't the important part. The important part is the games won and the siege that you played to get top 3, and they are heavily correlated. Like, if my silver stack could never get anywhere near top 3 because we suck. But, it's not, like, perfectly correlated. And I think OXG is just a little bit of an exception. They beat Heroic, M&M, and Wolves, and then lost all their other playoff matches. And I don't personally consider any of those teams inside, like, the top 7 or 8 teams in Siege.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I mean, they're all good teams though. Like they went 3. I mean, they went 3-2 in bracket. Then they beat those 3 teams. They lost to G2 and W7M. And well, I mean, who's to say that? Like, maybe there are some reasons to maybe not believe that they are number 1, but I don't think we've seen recently any reason to think that they're not good. Like we just don't have all of the evidence to be fully confident in them being number 1. But just I feel like all the other teams we've seen more flaws. Like that, again, they're number 1 right now. So just at least on the standings, they've been the best. And then going back to the last stage, they were really bad. But then if you look at like the last half or something, they were the best performing team I think over that period. So they haven't they just really haven't slipped up much in quite a while now. Like they've just been consistently good. And Sweater just has been consistently not so good. But everyone else on the team has proven their salt. They have Yaga now, who was quite good on M80 XSET, and seems to be transitioning back into Oxygen well. Newer is one of the best players in the world. Dream looking better than ever. Fox Sage very consistent. Like, they just have really good players, and nothing's really happened with them recently to suggest that they are not a top team, if not just the top team in NA.
Okay, so here's my logic for claiming that they're not. The more I think about it, the more I would.
So yeah,
put
so
them
like who?
Probably.
I mean, I guess you have
above
Space
Dark Zero.
Station, M80, and Dark Zero all above them.
Yes.
I mean, like,
the more I think about it, they do probably belong on Dark Zero. I was probably smoking a little bit too much of the Dark Zero copium. But to justify my OXG placement, this is from the tape, and I've seen this a lot, but I just want to talk about like the kind of most recent games they played. I'm going to use the Parabellum game because it was a bit of a pitfall, and maybe this wouldn't happen in BO3. But they looked really bad. And there's a good reason they looked really bad. It's because...
Did they look really bad? I mean,
I think they looked pretty... I mean, but Parabellum, I think they had a tweet like they had like 1 week of practice, and Parabellum did not play well in their other games.
Do you think Sonic or Beast Coast, Parabellum, or Mirage would have any wins if we were playing best of threes? Do you think they would all be 0-3 or 0-4?
Oh, that's a good question. Did any of them play each other? Okay, not counting if they just couldn't play each other. Would they have any wins?
No, like they have in the games that they played. Beast Coast has 2 wins.
That's a really good question.
Like, would they have beaten SSG or Sonics if they played 3 maps?
I'm
inclined to say they wouldn't.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, maybe, I don't know, like maybe they beat Sonics if Sonics keep playing that, but I feel like losing that map would have woken up Sonics, and then they go to probably a much better map for them. Cafe, again, was like their permaban for a long time. So, again, and the reason I'm bringing this up, like, Parabellum did beat Oxygen. Would they have beat them in a best of 3? They were, I guess, the better team on Oregon, but you think they're actually
the better team?
Do you think that's, like, a really meaningful statistic?
Okay, so I just want to justify why it's meaningful. Because I don't think it's meaningful because, Oxygen lost the game to Parabellum? That's terrible. But what I was watching on the tape, and this is probably why you disagreed, because I think the stats, you're right, the stats say Oxygen's first, and they don't really have that much breathing room. But when I watched the OXG Parabellum game, I was really just... I was not convinced in OXG, and here's why.
Sure.
Because in all of their other games, they were very Newers reliant. I think that back to the kind of heliocentric, everyone revolves around one player, OXG still kind of plays that style, whether intentionally or unintentionally, with Newers. They really do a lot of work to enable Newers. And in exchange, they rely on him popping off, and if he doesn't perform, they can struggle a lot. And I think what stuck out to me was their basement attacks as a result. This is mostly on attack. It's the same on defense to a point, but this is like mostly on attack, where they just kind of like, if Newers isn't just walking in and picking up kills, their attacks can kind of ground to a halt. One of the basement attacks I'm talking about, Newers got picked up. There was someone ratting in T3, and he just got, like, early picked. And then through the rest of the round, OXG just didn't challenge elbow. Like, they got the shield, no one would just walk in and elbow. And Parabellum just kept elbow control the whole round. No one was able to walk in and kill him. OXG wasn't able to get any space, and they lost the round because they just had nothing. And it was very similar the other round, another basement attack where Newers died early. And they tried to take elbow, but they just got farmed since no one's spearheading. No one's just walking in and fighting that guy without Newers. And maybe this is discounting them, because I'm kind of saying, like, without Newers they're bad, or, if Newers has an off game they're bad. Well, Newers doesn't have many off games. So I do see that as a fair point. But it's hard for me to put a player, like, I see a team being great because of a player above a great team. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, so you don't think the quality of the, like, if you took off Newers and, okay, just say Newers was a little bit worse of a player,
Yeah.
Just like, Newers, he's probably one of the best players in the world, by most people's accounts he is, but say he was, like, a little bit less impressive, or just even ignore him. Like, how high of an average quality of player do you think the other 4 players represent. Like,
it's not about quality of player to me. It's about the way they utilize these players. They kind of choose to use Newers in that sense. They're used to Newers just spearheading and kind of doing so much for them. It feels like they just can't do it without him. And it kind of makes me think of like older BDS, where I would think like, that they have 4 good players around Shaiko. Shaiko's better than Newers, and the rest of Oxygen's probably better than the rest of BDS, so I'm not calling them like a 1-to-1 comparison. But just for the metaphor's sake, they have good players around him, but can you win a major with if your Shaiko has a bad map? Well, you're not winning that map. I don't know, and I feel like teams that don't have that, you didn't really love my Dark Zero take, but I feel like NJ's really good. But Dark Zero, they have so many players who I feel like can step up, and they rely on utility so much, not just someone walking in and frying someone, that I definitely feel like they could do it if you just picked one of their players to silence. And in my head, in a major, someone's going to have a bad game. And to me, when I'm ranking these teams in power rankings, I'm really focused on, okay, who's most likely to lift a hammer or win a major? Because that's the goal siege.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, they are very reliant on Newers, and that's just sort of how the game works. When you're attacking, somebody has to walk into the building first. Yeah. And of course, that's your entry. So it makes the most sense to put all your effort into enabling that person, because and I guess your argument is more so that they are much more reliant on Newers than other teams are on their first entry or whatever. Yeah. Fair enough there. Maybe they fall apart a little bit. Maybe they need to have a little bit more in terms of a contingency plan. But even this stage, Newers had a bad game against Beast Coast. He was the worst player on Auction by far.
Yeah.
And they 7-3'd Beast Coast. And then the next game they played
was
the Parabellum game. And then
the thing about that game is, I think it was a BO1 and a BO3. If he kept playing that bad, I could actually see Beast Coast winning, because Dream had a 1 in 1,000 game where he was just
Dream went 2.0 that game.
And I know I said when Newers isn't good, no one can step it up. That's not technically true. It's just it's so rare. And no offense to Beast Coast, but they did it against Beast Coast. I'm more meant at a top tier NAL level. Dream's not gonna do that against W7M.
Yeah, most likely he's not. But then if we look at how they progressed from there, their next game was the Parabellum game, right? And Newers, he wasn't very good here either. 8-9, third highest rated player on the team, and they did lose this game. If Newers put up normal Newers numbers, probably they would have won this game, because it was still relatively close, 5-7. So Newers was just he just got a little bit of a slow start. 2 bad games in a row, and then the third game they played against, I think it was the M80 game, right? And also close-ish game, 7-5. M80 was close to pushing overtime. They didn't quite do it. Newers he did really well here, 11-7. He's outdone by Yaga, but still more Newers-esque numbers. And I don't know if continuing this conversation has much more value. We're probably just going to keep talking in circles.
Yeah,
I do get what you mean. Maybe they're a little bit reliant on Newers, but I just see the other 4 names on this team and think they're all really good. Sweater, I think maybe some question marks at this point, but Foxe and Dream are usually really consistent players. Dream probably
actually
he can't be as good as he's been this stage.
Talking about Sweater really quick.
Yeah.
Do you think okay, so Sweater did very well on Beast Coast, and Gunner did very well on Parabellum. But then when they switch to better teams, where they're instead of being the sun in this heliocentric metaphor, they're not given any control, or they're forced to play even roles they're not comfortable with. Gunner, I believe, played not Gunner. Sweater played a flanked watch role for a bit of time even.
Yeah, they slotted him into flank watch. They just tried to put him on Lysing roles. And people were, why replace Lysing?
Why are you doing that?
Nobody's better at that than Lysing, really.
But
then they switched up the roles, and then they had success.
Yeah, but did Sweater have success? He didn't,
I don't
right?
remember off the top of my head. I think he did pretty well in the latter half of stage 3. But again, I don't have the numbers offhand.
One sec, I'm looking up Sweater's numbers to.
He definitely did better, right? But
okay,
like,
in the
just pick up
last
stage
3
3, it's going
months,
to be
he has a
hard
.92 rating, minus 20. Last 6 months, it's a .94, minus 10. So he's going like slightly negative, but not like giga negative.
Yeah, but again, like he's on frag rolls now. Yeah, you need him to be doing better. Is Sweater an absolute fraud? Like maybe, I don't know. He did well on East Coast.
I was just asking, like, comparing them. I don't think either of them are frauds. I was just trying to make. I was actually kind of defending Sweater there. Like,
well, yeah,
it's
sure.
not
I'm
him.
not
It's
saying
kind of like
definitively, but
the system. Like when
the
you.
evidence is mounting. Is all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I don't see it as evidence against him, since I just think it's kind of like the situation he's in. Like, Oxygen isn't built around enabling him, and he's picking Ash, but he's not in like the situations you would think of when you think of Ash, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
I mean, they have Newers is like their main guy. Like they put as much of the resources into Newers as they can, and then Sweater has to take a little bit of the back seat. We've seen Sweater. He had like 2 games on Beast Coast in the same set. Like he dropped 20 against SSG and then like one other team. He was going crazy, and I mean, just maybe he can't hang in the little bit more structured environment. Oxygen maybe not the most structured, but probably more so than like the old Beast Coast was. And also he has to compete with better players on his team for kills now. Before, everyone else on his team sucked. Maybe you could bait him, whatever the case. But yeah, I just think it's been enough time to where he just hasn't been doing very good that I think it's reasonable to ask a bunch of questions, because it's not like one bad stage. It's like he was okay in stage 3 and then not very good at SI, and now he hasn't been good here. I think it does raise some questions. Like, he does really seem like the weak link on Oxygen right now. If he picks it up and plays as well, or even close to as well as people thought he would when he first joined T1, then I mean, Oxygen just wins SI. I don't know, but I do have him at number 1, so maybe I'm Oxygen at number 1, so maybe I'm talking down.
You've talked me up on Oxygen a little bit. Honestly, you've really talked me in on Ducks here a lot. The more I'm thinking about it, maybe it's not all of these teams are so close. I'm not gonna worry about ranking them right now. Like, exactly. I'm gonna keep what I had before.
Yeah, we saw
let's just move on.
Yeah. You must have SSG at 3.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, that's why I have them too.
Okay. Can we just have like a whole? Can we just dedicate a whole hour from here on out for like forest enjoyment, please? Like, I don't know what we're gonna call it.
Pushing an hour for the whole video, but I don't know.
Forest fun time. Like maybe a couple weeks just completely dedicated to worshiping Forest.
Yeah, I love some Forest gameplay just as much as the next guy, because like there's the former Astralis team was like probably just the most fun team to watch in the world.
Yeah.
Forest a big reason for that.
They were crazy. I remember they were an absolute statistical anomaly, all of SI. Like, all of their players were negative in multiple playoff wins, and yet they won. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was funny. And then they got like 30 clutches or whatever.
But obviously that's not real. But like, Forrest, I love watching him. Like that border game where he went Blitz and... Who was that against? He went Blitz in round 15 and SSG ended up winning. It was like a good
Leon,
team.
He was in the 1v1? Yeah, again, are you talking about against...
Oh, no, I'm talking about on the SSG. Like, it was a recent game, and it was against a good team.
Yeah,
who was that against?
It was in round 15, so it could have been... It wasn't Beast Coast, it was...
Was it Mirage? Maybe it wasn't against a good...
Okay, it was Mirage or it was Yeah, it was Mirage, right? Because... What map was it?
It was Border.
It was Bang. Border?
They had... It was Sonic.
There was another game he went a shield in like round 14. I think that was against Beast Coast.
Wait. Did they play Sonics on Border though? Because their Sonics game, they won in 15.
Yeah, but where did they play more? I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah, they played Sonics on Border.
Okay, yeah. So it was the Sonics
probably
game.
That game. Yeah.
And he was just like, he was a madman. The site was Sonics pick server they were defending. He went Blitz, and he just ran into jail. He probably had a drone. But he was just in customs at round 15. You can't do this on round 15. And then he runs up metal stairs. He takes armory. SSG have all the map control in the world, and it doesn't make sense like what he's doing on round like 15. He's a madman. They're all madmen. I love this team.
Yeah, I liked Space Station before, and I mean, I was wondering what they would do with the roster changes, but I love this team even now because like they picked up some of the players that I really liked, J9O and Forrest, being probably two of my favorite players in NAL, and then retaining Fultz and Hot and Cold. I was sad to see Rampy and Bosco go because I watched them for so long. They were some of my favorite players. But yeah, I really like both in practice and on paper, and just the personalities, like in general, all this stuff on the new Space Station roster. I love the look of the team. I wanted to put them number one, just biased, and like they might get there. They might end up being the best team in the league. But
I don't think it's fair to put them one right now. But we hopefully soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, we definitely need to see a little bit more because
yeah. Okay, but we're on the same page with them, so any further conversation might be a little boring. So we can just, unfortunately, move on from our Forest appreciation.
Let me say really, like, I do think that their position is a bit tenuous. Like they've gone round 15 3 times. Like they could be 1-3. Like they could have lost the other 2. They could have lost in round 15 3 times, and then they would still have the win against Parabellum. But like they could be 1-3 instead of 3-1 on record. So it's a little bit shaky. So just going forward, I don't think it's like totally solidified that they're like a top team. I think it's very likely, but I think because of what's happened so far, we could also see them stumble. So
in my head, it's solidified because I think this just goes back to the fact that I'm not really a stats guy, but like just watching the tape, they just look like a top team. And
yeah,
like obviously their numbers not like quite as good, like when you look at like their round count and such, but I'm still pretty high on them.
Yeah, J9O's been really good. Fultz also been really good. I think people were wondering if Fultz was if they should have also maybe dropped Fultz. I think Forrest hasn't yet been as good on Space Station as he was on Astralis, but give him a little bit of time. And then Merc, I imagine he'll get better. He's also been not phenomenal. And
Merc's a big question mark.
Yeah, Hot and Cold's been fine, and he's sort of back on the hard support now, which I'm a little bit sad to see because he was so good for a while when he was sort of the main guy being enabled. But
no longer.
Yeah, I think it feels like Space Station's been good, and all of their players should be about as good as they are now, or better going forward. Maybe a little bit of fall off from J9O and Fultz, but no, I have a good amount of confidence, but nothing's for sure, especially a team that just played 4 best of 1. So.
Okay, yeah. So now I believe there's only one team we've yet to talk about, and you don't have them at 1, so you must have them at 2.
Yep.
It's M8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, how are you feeling about M80, and why did you place them 2?
So, yeah, their number, what are they, 3 in the standings or something?
Let me check. You're correct. They're 3. But they played 4 games, and their teams have only played 3 games, so there's an asterisk there.
Dark Zero and Beast Coast can both pass them. They've only played 3 games. If they win...
Yeah, if they win in regulation, they will have more points. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, based on just what we've seen so far, like, M80 haven't been amazing. I think it was tough to call how they would do because the team's been pretty well sort of restructured. Like, they kept the backbone, the support players. They kept Kino and Diaz. They retained Gomez as well. Replacing Spirits and Yaga. And like this was a team that was together for quite some time. Like I think probably in some people's heads they think, oh yeah, that's just a new team. But no, like they played together for a considerable amount of time. Like a lot of teams just make roster changes more quickly. Like they'll keep 3 or 4 of their players, but they'll keep changing. Like that 5-man was together for a good amount of time. Mm-hmm. So finally they make the changes, and they look like incredible changes. They bring on Spoit and Iconic. Yeah. And neither of them have been spectacular yet. Like you have to imagine they're going to do better because of what they've done in the past. But they're both just like okay. Diaz and Kino have been their best players. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe they're just really comfortable there. But yeah, it just seems like nowhere to go but up for this team is why I put them where they are.
Here's what I have to say, because I have M80 at 1. So why I have them so high is I'm a massive believer in this team and what they've done. So in my head, how the team replacement works, I saw on Reddit a lot of people were saying like they got rid of Yaga for Iconic, and they got rid of Spirits for Spoit, and it seems like a very small distinction. But role-wise, it's kind of the other way around, where Spirits, he hasn't put up the stats to show for it, but he's been a very good spearhead for them, where like he's kind of leading the charge, and whenever they go for a crazy play, Spirits is normally the first one in the door. And like when you look at their blue rushes, for example, like Spirits goes blitz. This is on Oregon, and he just runs at that smoke in the corner in an elbow. And, like, yeah, he dies a lot, but he's a great spearhead. And I think that's what Iconic's going to do. Iconic's just an absolute, like, insane person. And he's just going to run at people and create so much space for everyone else. And it's going to be a great disruptor. And I just love that change. And honestly, I've always seen M80 as a spectacular team. Because, in my opinion, they're the only team that has this much, like, this richness of gun skill. I think the other teams that are close to them on gun skill are OXG, and Sonics may even have more gun skill, but where they can distinguish is they can not only have that extreme level of gun skill with picking up Sploit, who I think is like a top 10 player in the world, but also they have like this beautiful creativity and aggression that no one else has. Like, this is a while ago. They weren't even called M80 at the time. They were called XSET. But I can remember the first time I like started really liking this team. They played Sonics on Oregon like a few stages ago, and there's a default crossfire. Like when you go kids, you don't want the other team jumping in big window, so you play someone in security. And when you play someone in security, you need to play someone top freezer to support them, and then there's kind of a crossfire. One second, I'm pulling it up so I can give everyone like kind of a visual representation of what I'm talking about.
So, I mean, while you're doing that,
yeah,
you
sorry.
had it? I was trying to fill the air.
Yeah, sorry, what are you saying?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about, a lot to consider with M80, because again, it was a really long-standing roster. I think they were all friends. It was called like a friendship roster, and then I don't know. I think a lot of people were wondering how they were going to do, and then they defied most people's expectations. I think a lot of people that were really in the know knew that they would be good.
Yeah.
But now, no, they've shaken things up with Sploit and Iconic, and I can continue afterwards if you want to play your thing.
Yeah, sorry, I can't find it, but regardless, it's not really important because the important takeaway is what ended up happening is Spirits he rushed the guy in security. Now there's a crossfire, they soft-naded it, and this is all just beautiful play because none of this is default. They're executing crazy stuff at like crazy ingenuitive stuff at a very high level. So Spirits goes blitz, he runs at the security guy, and you're not killing a blitz in security. It's a small box. And then the round gets reset because of, like, I don't know, some kind of bug or glitch. And then they just run it back, but instead of targeting the security side of the crossfire, Spirits enters basement, and he runs up security.
Yeah, I think I remember this.
They're doing crazy things, but they all make so much logical sense. They're just such an ingenuitive team and a creative team. And they're so fun to watch play. And on top of that, because just that, I don't think is enough to be better than like a Dark Zero, for example, like on a tactical X's and O's level. But they have now maybe the most gun skill in the league. Like I said, maybe Sonics, but Sonics isn't nearly on the X's and O's level. Like, I can't put anyone above them, personally.
Yeah, I think they're like sort of hard to quantify in a way. Like, what team would you? What team do you think is the most similar to them in the league? Like, it's not Dark Zero. Like, it's got to be like Oxygen or.
If I had to say which team was most similar to them, it would not be in the league. I can say that it would be a Brazilian team. I don't know which one.
Yeah, maybe,
but it would be. I would compare them to a top Brazilian team.
They have quote-unquote Brazilian players, even though they all came up in NA, right? But then they have the Brazilian.
But that's not why. It's like how they play.
No, and I do think it is like it's because of Vivas and Bodega largely, and of course they picked players to fit the mold and whatever. I think they're really good at calculated aggression. Maybe the best at it. Like the old Astralis roster, I think you could maybe like call them that a little bit, but I don't know, like calculated might be.
Yeah, that might be like
it might be a step too far because they were aggressive in a way that like it wasn't calculated, and so the other like it was difficult for the other team to handle because they were just making Mania up. Like they didn't know that they were going to do it until they were going to do it in a lot of cases.
And how could you know they're going to do it if they don't know?
M80 has like they come in with the intent to be really aggressive. Like Gomez and Spirits and Kino are all like really up in your face kind of players, and then Diaz is really passive, and then Iago is sort of in the middle. Spoit and Iconic, I think, are also really up in your face players. They seem like players that would really fit this system well, and we'll see if that is the case going forward. They might deserve number one if they'd played a little bit better so far. I think I would have just put them number one because I think they might have the highest ceiling. Like we said that about Sonics, but like it might just be this team. Gomez, I put him on the fraud watch. I don't know. Like a lot of people are wondering about Gomez, and I wasn't on that train just yet, but seeing how he's played this stage thus far, like I don't know. Like what do you think about Gomez? Do you think he's like not up to snuff compared to the other players, or?
I think Gomez is pretty good. I don't think he's like necessarily as good as the rest of the team. Like he's not like quite like he's just not as good as Spoit. But I don't see him as like a clear negative that others have seen. He's -3. And he had, like, I just haven't seen him play, like, just terrible. Like, I've seen, like, a lot of people have said he's played. I just think he's played, like, pretty good. Which, honestly, like, do M80 need him to play great? I don't really think so. And he's not playing bad. So I don't think he's going to prevent them from winning, even at a major level.
Yeah, I'm not saying Gomez is definitely a bad player. I mean, my biggest question, and far be it from me to call anyone in Tier 1 esports a bad player, but I don't know, like maybe they can find a good replacement for him. Like maybe he'll really boss up because he was kind of lackluster, and then like it was him and Spirits that were putting up numbers sometimes, but they were really inconsistent. And then Gomez picked it up; he started being more consistent. I would keep in mind this stage though, his stats are sort of inflated. Their game against Oxygen, I think he put up really good numbers, and they lost that game. So a lot of his good stats are sort of meaningless here. I think that's something to keep in mind.
I don't know. Is that the case? Like, if you okay, you're playing ranked, you get 4 kills and then you die, and then your teammates troll the 4v1. Are your 4 kills meaningless because you didn't win the round?
In an objective sense, they are meaningless, but like, is it your fault that you lost a round? Like in that, like no. There's, if you got your team to a 4v1, like that's their bad.
Okay. Well, first of all, I disagree that they're meaningless, but let's just look at them from the second.
I'm just saying objectively, like they did not contribute to you winning a round. They should have, but they did not. Like that's all I'm saying.
But I'm just going to explain my logic so you understand. But at the time, to make it more likely, you can't, like, you can look at it from hindsight, but at the time, they made it to a 99% chance. And when you zoom out, you can say, oh, well, if that game's no longer a ranked game, we're now going to make that game a major game. What if they lose the map? Or they win the map, but then they lose the series? Or they win the series, but then they don't win the tournament? Like, at what point does that kill become meaningless? And it just seems weird to say, like, oh, you increase your team's likelihood to win in this scenario, but since I can go in the future and see when you lost, well, that doesn't count anymore. I don't like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we're saying, they turned out to be meaningless. Like, they felt very impactful at the time. But, and that's a really skewed example. Like, if you're getting a 4K to open up the round, like, that's just such a rare scenario.
Of course, but it's skewed on purpose to prove a point. It's not like,
Sure, but, like, it's just a little bit unrealistic for that. Like more realistically, maybe there's a player that a lot of times they get a 2K in a round.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and maybe not. Let's not even say it's like at the beginning of the round. Let's say it's at some point in the round. Like maybe they get a 2K and then they die.
Yeah.
Is like how good is that player? And I'm not saying they do it all the time. I'm saying they do it like pretty consistently. But what if 80% of those rounds that got those 2Ks in, they lost? Like if if it's at the expense of the rest of their players, like if they had to hold an angle for 2.5 minutes to get the there's just so many things to consider.
I get what you're saying.
If it's a really consistent trend where their big impact plays are in rounds that you do not win, like you definitely have to scrutinize that a little bit.
Okay,
but it's like the thing with Citizen, like he would put up. Okay, he would pad his stats sometimes, but
can we get back to Gomez for a second? Because I think we both think Gomez is like pretty good. He's not going to lose him many games. Like even in a major grand final, he's probably not going to drop a donut and lose them anything, right?
Well, I think we're
on the same page on that.
I think for the most part, but I think in the Dark Zero game, he did cost them.
Oh yeah, but it's a BO1. You know, like everyone, there's not a player that hasn't costed you a BO1. But I think in like the realistic sense, like obviously we can get into super theoretical sense where if this guy 4Ks or if this guy 2Ks. But in like the what's really happening in the league, we think pretty similar things about Gomez and we kind of agree, right?
I mean, well, again, more or less. But like if we're talking, and sure, we can just keep discounting things because it's all best of ones, but that's all we really have to work with at the moment. If they could be number 1 in the league right now, right? They'd be tied for number 1, right, against Oxygen if they had 2 more points. So they lost the Dark Zero in overtime, so they got 1 point. If Gomez played better and they won in regulation, and of course if NJR didn't clutch and they won in regulation, either way, they would have got 2 more points. They're on 7 now. They'd go to 9, same as Oxygen. Gomez went 6-13 against Dark Zero. Like obviously the weak link. Everyone else on his team went even or positive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does raise a question. Like, he cost them here, and so if you amplify that, if over the course of more best of ones, over the course of single maps in best of threes, like, will he cost them? I'm not drawing a conclusion, but I'm saying in this case, like, he did cost them. That's all I'm saying here.
Okay. So, one more, one guy.
I felt those because I had Gomez in my fantasy drafts. I was like, come on, just get some kills, Gomez, please. I'm begging you. But
okay, maybe. Okay, okay, that makes it way more reasonable. I didn't realize he was costing you fantasy points. My bad.
Oh, well,
I wouldn't have defended.
I won this week in fantasy.
Oh, okay.
So not to worry. But
okay, well, if you put it in that perspective, does Gomez losing you points even matter since he won the fantasy game?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the end, no, but that's not my main reason. I'm saying.
No, I know. I was just being annoying because he made that point.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, he did a really bad against Dark Zero. Everyone else on his team was fine. They lost a 15-round game. By all accounts, he cost them, right?
Yeah.
Get a few more kills, you probably just win the game.
Yeah, but we agree he's not consistently costing them. So I just want to move on from him, and I want to move on to Spoit because I am so high on Sport, man. I think Rogue, like you could really look at how good he is from watching Rogue. Until Sport joined Rogue was okay. They would be like 4th place. And then when you watch them in the major, they just didn't necessarily have the firepower to stand up to like any top team from really any region. Like they were pretty good.
They had
and I love Deepak and I love Leon, but just in pure like guns, they didn't stack up.
Who was the player they had on their team? Because they replaced like one of the worst players in the league with Spoit. It was.
I'm blanking on it too, but I know who you're talking about.
I keep wanting to say Rise. I know it's not Rise.
Yeah.
Whoever, the dude that was like bad, and everyone's like, "Why is this guy on your team?"
Yeah.
And then they bring in Spoit, and then they win a major, and Spoit's like a top 10 player in the world immediately. Obviously he's like incredible, and I would expect him to start playing even better on M80, and as a result, probably M80 will win more than 50% of their games like they've done thus far. Okay, so you talked before about how you think Iconic is going to be the real Maniac, and he has been known to do that, but Spoit is like looking at the numbers, he is just the main entry. He has 19 entries to Iconic's 10 entries. He's clearly in that first entry position. And maybe that'll change a little bit as things progress. Maybe Iconic will get a little bit crazier as he gets more comfortable. I don't know, but Spoit is it's not hard to sell somebody on Spoit. Like you just show them the numbers, show them the fact that
Spoit guy's pretty good.
Like he's pretty good. Yeah.
But one more hot take I had: Rogue got slapped by Wild. This doesn't even relate to NAL, but I need someone to tell it to, man. So Rogue got slapped
Yeah,
by Wild.
I didn't really watch the EU.
I didn't watch too much EUL. I
I
wasn't in my home country at the time, so it was a little hard for me. But like, so Rogue gets the slap, and Meepy also left at the same time. Split left, and the general consensus seemed to be no Meepy, no win. And my like super hot spicy take would be like, obviously it seemed like Rogue wasn't like at their same level, like Leon wasn't playing like normal Leon, Deepak wasn't like, etc. But the bigger issue was that they just didn't have Split. Like,
well, I mean, it throws a massive wrench in your because they didn't even think they were going to lose Split. Like, he got bought out. They didn't drop him. They didn't have plans to drop him. So you lose your star player who is your first entry. Like, it throws a massive wrench in things. And also, not like maybe Wild is actually the second coming of Jesus. Like, they've done it probably not, but they're top of their group so far.
Well, they 7-1 them, like.
Yeah, they got smashed, and I didn't watch, like, I saw the score, but I didn't watch the game, so I don't know how that came about. But again,
it was
we can,
not pretty.
It's another song. We can write it off. It's whatever.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say it looks like to me more than any kind of coaching or philosophical or kind of technical change behind the scenes. Like, back to the heliocentric metaphor, like their sun just disappeared, just like that. It's gone now. They have no sun, and all the planets are just like floating around, like completely.
Did Noodle do bad in that game?
He didn't do terrible, but he's not spoiled.
Oh, they got 7-2. I just looked at it. So.
Oh, 7-2. My bad.
Okay, but yeah, still, it's not really much better than the 7-1. Leader and Noodle, the two new players were the top two. They both went 6 and 7, and then Cryan, Leon, and Deepak all did pretty poorly. And then they just got walked all over by Wild. Maybe that's fair. Maybe Koi is truly nothing without Spoit. They had okay results, and the team changed a lot, like really rapidly over the period leading up to them getting Spoit, because it was like the last major of not this last year but the year before that. Is that the one that they made top 4 in? Do you remember? I don't remember which major it is. It's not Mexico, but the one after that.
I can't remember. Right? I can't remember where it was geographically, but I remember.
I think it was Sweden. And I think they made top 4 there, and then they went to SI, made SI off of that, and then they didn't do that well, but they made top 12.
Okay, well, like the thing I was saying, with OXG, like sure you can say they didn't do that well, but I mean like they did do pretty well. If you look at like the teams they lost to the same teams as Oxygen. If they got to play
Were you talking
Wolves,
about Koi?
No, sorry, I'm talking about M80.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm back on M80. If they got to play like the same teams when they went to SI, if they got to play like Wolves, Heroic, and mid for a third place spot, like they would be third place too.
So, okay, who did M80 play? They played Heroic, Dark Zero, FaZe, Secret in groups. They went 3-1 in groups.
Yeah, that's
loss
already
was
very good.
Dark Zero, I think. I think they lost to Dark Zero, and then in the bracket, they played. Where are they? They lost. Yeah, they lost to W7M, and they eventually lost to G2. Yeah, so they got double eliminated by the grand finalists, same as Oxygen. They beat Space Station along the way, and I mean, I don't know, not the greatest feat at that time. And so, I mean, they didn't really do much in practice. They beat Space Station, who were just like not very good.
Space Station
beat Heroic, but that's also not like the most impressive feat. And then they lost to G2. So like they lost to the grand finalists, but they lost like fairly early to the grand finalists. They didn't really get too much time to prove their stuff. But 3-1 in groups is good.
But I just think like since they just ran into W7M and G2 so quickly, like any other team. What I'm getting at here is, in my mind, this is gonna sound outrageous, but in this tournament, M80 was the third best team despite the placing.
I don't know. That's kind of well. Okay, so look, in groups they beat FaZe,
yes,
who only made top 16. They beat Heroic, who also only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who were grouped. Mm-hmm. And then they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Heroic, who also only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only made top 16, and they beat Secret, who only SSG and Brett. Like that's all they like.
And who did they
I
lose
don't know.
to?
That's a wild conclusion to draw based on the teams that they actually played.
I was just loving watching them play.
And
I thought they would go very far, and then I'm like, oh, they played the P7M.
And they went the only team. Who did they 2-0? They had to go all 3 maps versus FaZe. They had to go all 3 maps versus Heroic. The only team that they 2-0'd in groups was Secret.
Yeah, it's Secret. I understand. But I still stand by my... Okay, maybe not 3. When I look at the bracket and think about it more...
I mean, in just terms of accolades, you probably got to say Astralis.
Okay, well, Astralis...
They beat Sonics and Los One and...
Okay, wait. They beat Sonics? Sonic looked terrible!
Okay, but well, they didn't look... it was a close series, just like every Astralis series was.
Just like... Okay, well, Astralis... If we're going by accolades, you're correct. Astralis had the 3rd best accolades.
Okay, Sonics might have only made top 16, but they lost to Astralis, who made top 4, and they did lose to Dark Zero, who only made top 12, but they lost in round 15, map 3 to Dark Zero. Like, they could have beat, and it would have been close, but they lost, and then, I don't know, maybe...
I was cheering for Dark Zero. I was screaming at the end of that game.
I think it's a little bit harsh to say Sonics were awful at SI. Like
that was super harsh
based on expectations, because they did well in groups and then they lost a very, very tight series to both Dark Zero and...
Sorry, can I just detract that statement? Because that's just... you're right, that's not true. But, the Siege they played frustrated me so much. Like, they weren't awful, they were a good team because of the players they had. But the Siege that they played, like X's and O's, like tactically, was awful, if that makes sense. But they weren't awful because they have such good players still.
I mean, you can have good players and be an awful team, or relatively speaking, compared to the other best teams in the game. Like, they're obviously going to beat T2 teams and whatever. But if we're just talking about playing against T1 teams.
Okay. Anyway,
and then Sonics, they beat Wolves, Liquid, and Dire Wolves in groups, only losing to M&M. So,
Okay, one more thing about this SI, like, who should have placed where. Because the more I think about it, the more silly it is. Like, you can't say who should have, really placed where. And it's not maybe the best point for me to be bringing up. I just brought it up originally because I wanted to place Oxygen, in my head, Oxygen wasn't as good as SI suggested, so I needed to kind of justify
they might not have been good enough to you wouldn't call them top 3 team in the world just based on what they did, but I don't know what teams were that much more impressive than, I don't know.
Yeah, but saying but trying to place it out if I'm restructuring by accolades is kind of a silly thing to do. You can just say OXG probably a little lower, M80 probably a bit higher. I really shouldn't have been. In my books, W7M won.
Yeah,
G22,
I think Koi is another one that they seemed better than what they placed. Like, top 6 is still really good, but they went 3-1 in groups. They were the only team that beat W7M up until the grand final when G2 beat them.
Okay, but the thing about that is they fell off the face of the earth when they played W7M the second time. There were rumors at that time that Kanto was getting dropped, and after he did get dropped.
He did get dropped, but okay, so I don't know what actually happened, but there were those rumors, and then players on the team were like, that is not true. Maybe they lied, but it seems like...
They did drop him, though.
It seemed like they hadn't made that decision at that point, and it, in fact, was just a coincidence that they, after that, decided to drop him.
I don't want to get into this conversation, because we have, to be clear, we have no clue what went on. But if I was making an SI run, and I was planning to drop one of my players after it, I would want to do everything in my power to make sure he did not know that, because he thinks he's he would play terrible if he knew that, so we can't let him know that. But that's conspiratorial.
And then
conspiratory. Sure. I shouldn't even be saying that because I know absolutely nothing. So it's
and they got merged by W7M, and then they fell down and they lost to Astralis in one of the biggest heartbreakers ever, because they got clutched on by Shuttle, and then in the very last round they lost a 1v1 to get eliminated from SI.
That was crazy. Everything Astralis does is crazy. Okay.
Oh my god. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just saying Koi was probably...
Okay, moving on from this SI silliness that I started.
Yeah,
let's
well,
just.
I think that probably wraps it up, right?
Well, I just want to
Something
go
else you
back.
wanna revisit?
Just not revisiting anything, but I just want to go back, bottom to top, and kind of make like where you've kind of convinced me these teams are at, because I only wanted to do this because I was so confused where these teams are at, and hopefully I have maybe the slightest bit of an idea that hopefully won't be ruined tomorrow when Mirage 7-0's M80.
Well, it's not tomorrow, right? It's on Wednesday.
The Wednesday. Well, I don't even think they play, but you know, you know what I mean.
Well, they definitely play. Oh, those two. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every team plays, but I don't know.
Right, you get my point. Like, hopefully,
Yeah, of course.
we don't really
Sure.
know. But anyway, so where I would go.
Are you changing yours then?
Yes, I'm changing mine to kind of reflect what I better think now rather than before. So I would still. I still think we didn't. Neither of us really knew much about Parabellum. So Mirage 8, Parabellum 7. Excuse me, Parabellum 7, Beast Coast 6. I kind of stand by those. But then I think Dark Zero maybe have to go 5 because of the achieved thing, but I do think that needs to go with an asterisk that's subject to change.
Okay, I don't think it's just because of achieve. I think.
Oh yeah, of course.
Outside of NJR needs to step it up a little bit. But.
Of course, maybe a bit. Pambazoo isn't playing at quite the levels I would want him to play, and there are like a few other things there where I see your point.
Major MVP on Finka Pambazoo.
Whoa! I can't get into. We don't have time for me to get into this right.
So you're putting Dark Zero at 5? That's what you're doing.
You still have to hit the person in the face, regardless of your gun. It's not even the best. Okay, we're not doing this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dark Zero 5. And then I would have to say, crap. I don't. Sonic's 4. SSG 3. I would actually say, yeah, SSG and OXG, they're tied for second. Okay, that's no.
I think putting SSG at 3rd is reasonable. Like,
you know what? I was gonna put SSG at 3, but I cannot put my man Forrest below OXG. I refuse to do it.
Forrest is not the reason that they're in the position they are right now. Like, it's JNano and Bolts have been doing the heavy lifting.
No, I refuse. That may be factual information, but you can never convince me of that.
Okay, so you're
seriously though,
3?
I like the way SSG is playing more, and I think than OXG, and I think with more time they'll continue to play that way. They just seem like better coached. So I would say maybe with a better sample size, this will look more justified. So yeah, OXG 3, SSG 2, M81. And
I don't know if you saw this, but I think Redeemer said he had like his. I don't really want to talk about it a lot, but like his father passed away recently. So if you want to talk about like a hole in their coaching staff, like that's one of their.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm so sorry, I didn't know that. That sentence I said seems absolutely morbid when you put it.
I can't remember. Like, I think it was like right around SI or right after SI. But of course, he's still feeling the impact of that. So there's sort of a reason.
I didn't know that,
and I'm not saying it even is the coaching, like, whatever.
I wasn't even calling him a bad coach. I was just saying I love the way SSG's playing. I'm sorry if that could be like.
Yeah, no, I don't think you meant to be malicious, but I just thought I'd point that out.
Okay. Anyways, to end on. Well, maybe not the best note to end on, but I think that's all we have to say, right?
It was okay, and it was right before SI, but still, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, OXG 3, SSG 2, M81.
Yes.
Yeah, I can more or less agree. I'd maybe like switch a few things, but it's all pretty arbitrary at this point.
I'm just sorry. Before we end, I'm just so curious. Which few things specifically? Like which? I'm not going to argue with it. I just tell me the name.
What I would change?
Yeah. Just tell me the name.
Oh well, I mean, I'm just saying like because I had Mirage and Parabellum switched from what you said, and then like I might reorder the top 3, but I think Dark Zero and Sonics are number 4 and 5. Maybe you switch them around. Beast Coast is 6, and so I might just switch around the top 3 and the bottom 2, but like nothing crazy. I think it's all pretty reasonable what we concocted there.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for coming on. and I'll see you later.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun having you.